The day I regained my hearing, Robert Sterling and his mistress were together, right there beside my bed. In an act that felt like pure malice, Jessica whispered, her voice tearful, "What if Sarah suddenly wakes up?" But her body pressed closer, burning with desire. Even if she could feel it, "You wouldn't touch her, right?" Robert Sterling chuckled softly. "I gave her more than enough sleeping pills. She wouldn't wake up even if I brought in a dozen men. She's just a deaf mute, like a dead fish who can't make a sound. How could she compare to you?" He looked up as if to check on me, only to meet my trembling eyes. "You noticed? Fine. Did it feel this good the day you cheated?" A warm hand covered my eyes, and I heard the quickening rhythm of their coupling. In that moment, my heart died completely. I turned and dialed a number I hadn't called in 5 years. The call connected. The man's voice was hoarse, struggling to suppress a rising inflection. "You've finally come to ask for my help, madam? It's time for the exhibition." I hung up the phone in a hurry, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I wondered how much of my distress the person on the other end had heard. We hadn't spoken in 5 years. Yet he seemed to know my situation. "Madam, Mr. Sterling is waiting." Forced into a garment made of mere scraps of fabric, I was enclosed in a glass box. As I was wheeled towards the center of the main hall, many people were already leering at me. It struck me then how protective Robert Sterling had been when we first started dating. Anyone who showed unwelcome interest in me would vanish from high society the very next day. Everyone said he loved me to the point of madness. But now, I was being ogled like a cheap commodity, and I had Robert Sterling to thank for it. More and more white liquid appeared on the glass, and vulgar comments filled the air. When the crowd dispersed, the salty, foul odor lingered in my nostrils, my stomach churned, and I threw up, tears and snot streaming down my face. Robert Sterling walked over, his gaze sweeping over the mess. "Too bad you're deaf. You can't hear what they were saying. If you could, maybe you'd even enjoy it." I slapped away the hand Robert Sterling had clamped on my cheek. Looking up, I saw his eyes, filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher. For a fleeting second, I almost thought he still loved me. "Chi-Chi, you thought I still loved you? You have no idea how disgusting you are." He shoved my head down into the vomit. The stench was overwhelming. "Clean her up. Tell her to come serve me in an hour." Tears mixed with the filth. For a moment, I didn't know whether I was feeling disgust or heartbreak. Ever since I caught them together, he would make me clean up the mess after they finish. Sometimes, he would even make me stay in the bedroom, watching them being intimate. Robert Sterling called this serving him. It was just like the practice in ancient wealthy households, where the lowest-ranking servant was forced to witness and sometimes participate in the master's intimate acts. In a scene where 3 people shouldn't have been present, he kissed Jessica passionately, yet his eyes kept returning to me. Robert Sterling blindfolded Jessica. He left a space for one person on the bed and had me lie there. A warm hand wandered over my skin, moving freely, blindfolded. Jessica whimpered, "Robert." Robert Sterling immediately lowered his head to kiss her, his hand never leaving me as he reached his climax. His silent mouth seemed to be calling my name. It was just a hallucination, watching Robert Sterling and Jessica find pleasure together. I forced a smile, trying desperately to suppress the pain in my heart. Jessica cried out softly, as if she couldn't take it anymore, and pulled off her blindfold. Her moist eyes stared at Robert Sterling. "Robert, we need to be careful." She pulled an ultrasound scan from under the pillow. Her eyes very beautiful, impregnant. Those 4 words hit me like a bucket of cold water, leaving me frozen in place. Watching them laugh and examine the ultrasound scan, my body began to tremble. My insides felt like they were shifting, my face pale as I watched the joyful scene before me. Robert Sterling picked up Jessica. "Jessica, I'm going to tell everyone you've done something great for the Sterling family." He never spared me a single glance, as if H forgotten I was his legal wife. News of Jessica's pregnancy spread throughout the villa within a day. That afternoon, Robert Sterling arranged for people to move all her things in, bag after bag. Everything in my room was thrown out. Seeing me, Jessica smiled innocently. "Sorry, Sadie, I don't really like having other people's things in my room. It feels like there's a stale smell. You didn't know, did you? Your room has been moved to the staff quarters at the end of the hallway. It's okay if you can't hear. Just learn to read lips. Don't be useless and cause Robert trouble." A crashing sound came from behind me. Jessica had thrown my jewelry box, and it hit the floor. My sapphire necklace rolled out. It was the first gift Robert Sterling had ever bought me. To put it simply, it was the symbol of our love. My body reacted faster than my mind, and I chased after it as it rolled. Robert Sterling appeared at the end of the hallway just then. He stepped on the sapphire necklace. I bent down to pick it up, holding out my hand, quietly waiting for him to give it back. Instead, the next second, Robert Sterling grabbed my neck. Sarah, how long are you going to keep pretending? You don't care about this sapphire necklace at all. And you don't care about me either. He whispered in my ear, then, realizing I couldn't hear him, lifted his hand and threw the necklace downstairs. The sapphire shattered into 2 pieces upon impact. Damn it, Robert Sterling cursed, tightening his grip on my neck before shoving me aside. Sudden lack of oxygen combined with losing my balance sent me tumbling down the stairs. My back slammed violently against the wall, and while stars burst before my eyes, I also coughed up a mouthful of blood. A scream echoed out. Jessica cried out incessantly, "Robert, my stomach hurts." Robert Sterling glanced at me at the bottom of the stairs, but still disappeared from my sight. "Mr. Sterling, Madam is injured. Are you still holding the exhibition tonight?" He walked past me, carrying Jessica, not looking away, and not forgetting to avoid the puddle of blood. Everything proceeds as planned. After the exhibition, I lay on the bed, completely drained of energy. The door was pushed open. The smell of alcohol instantly filled the room. Robert Sterling was slightly unsteady on his feet. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he leaned over me. Staring into my eyes, "Sarah," he called out my name repeatedly, his voice thick with drunkenness. For a moment, I felt like I was seeing the Robert Sterling from 3 years ago. "Sarah, why don't you love me anymore?" Robert Sterling let out a low laugh. "Anyone else can touch you, but I can't. Is that right? Or is it that you just like lying next to Jessica and me, watching me be intimate with other women?" Sensing something pressing against my leg, I snapped back to full awareness. "Don't touch me." I tried to use my knee to block him, but he forcefully pushed my legs apart. His rough, alcohol-laden breath fanned my ear. "Do you act like this with others too?" Tears streamed down my face. I lifted my hand and delivered a hard slap to Robert Sterling's face. He turned his head from the blow. "Robert Sterling, I'm dirty." He stared at me for a long time, then slammed the door and left in a rage. Soon after, sounds of intimacy came from the next room. I covered my ears, forcing myself to fall asleep. A pungent perfume smell woke me. Opening my eyes, I saw Jessica holding a kettle of boiling water. Without hesitation, she poured it directly onto me. I screamed. Jessica clamped a hand over my mouth and shushed me. "Robert said your screams were unpleasant." I didn't believe him before. Hearing it today, he was right. "You know I'm pregnant. What face do you have left to stay here? Get out as soon as possible." She stood up, brushed off imaginary dust, and picked up the Hermes bag from the table. "Oh, right, you didn't know? Anyone who comes to see your exhibition has to pay 50,000. This Hermes bag is basically you buying it for me. In ancient times, you would have been a perfect courtesan." Jessica turned to leave. I stood up, ignoring the burning pain in my skin, and slapped her hard across the face. Jessica screamed, clutching her face, but her malicious eyes suddenly became tearful and frightened. She cowered on the floor. "I just wanted to get you a glass of water. Why did you hit me?" Jessica didn't know I had regained my hearing. Her words were clearly not meant for me. I turned around and sure enough, met Robert Sterling's furious gaze. I slapped her, and Jessica demanded I count out of her 1,998 times, half for her, and half for the child in her belly. The dizziness from falling down the stairs still lingered. Before I could finish a third of the kowtows, I was completely limp. "She can't do it herself. Give her a hand." Robert Sterling's cold voice sounded. The people around me crowded in, holding me up to continue bowing my head. When I finished, my forehead was bloody. I collapsed into the staff quarters. The wounds I had just tended to reopen from the violent movements, and blood traced down my cheek into my mouth. 3 steps away from the bed, my body swayed, and I fell to the floor. In the darkness, I felt my breath grow warm, and my skin became feverish. In a haze, someone lifted me and placed me on the bed. A cool touch on my forehead felt like Robert Sterling was close. "Why won't you just give in?" The question echoed in the empty space. But when I woke up, I was alone. My wounds had been bandaged, though the person's technique was clearly clumsy. Walking out, I heard Robert Sterling's laughter from downstairs. He was sitting with a few young men he knew. Just as I was about to go down, I overheard them talking about me. "Rob, why wasn't that woman Sarah exhibited yesterday?" Robert Sterling's face was expressionless. "Sarah is sick. Only when she's healthy can she generate more profit for me, right?" My blood ran cold. Robert Sterling now looked at me as if I were merely a commodity. Speaking of which, Rob, why is Sarah always in that glass box? I recognized the man who asked that question. His name was Mark. Willful, obsessive, and morally corrupt. Mark licked his lips. While you can see clearly enough, it's not the same as seeing her up close. If only I could touch her. A cough from nearby interrupted him. Following their gaze, they saw me standing on the stairs. Apologize quickly. The man who had coughed feigned anger at Mark. It's fine. Robert Sterling toyed with a wine glass in his hand, a sneer flickering at the corner of his mouth. She damaged her ears while she was out cheating. Now she's deaf. Robert Sterling beckoned me over. I pretended not to have heard what they said and walked to his side. My body stiffened the moment he pulled me into his arms. Laughter erupted around us, just like Rob. Having that kind of tolerance, otherwise, we wouldn't be able to admire Rob's wife's beauty. Why call her Rob's wife? Does a cheating woman deserve that? The current Rob's wife has changed. You know, Jessica came out of the kitchen carrying fruit. Hearing them call her Rob's wife, her eyes curved into a smile. She doesn't deserve it. Robert Sterling stroked my cheek with the back of his hand. One corner of his mouth lifted in his characteristic fake smile. So I plan to host an auction party tomorrow night. Whoever wins the bid gets to spend the night with Sarah. Hearing this, the men present grew excited. Really, Rob? Sarah? She was a champion in a supermodel competition. When have I ever lied? Robert Sterling's words were a clear confirmation. Help me spread the word. Let everyone interested come and see. Cheating is her hobby anyway. He gestured, assuming I couldn't hear him. Casually making things up. I nodded, pretending to be natural. The laughter around me sent shivers down my spine. See? Robert Sterling turned my face outwards. I told you. She's just a cheap woman who loves to cheat. The next day, before noon, Robert Sterling ordered me locked in my room. The windows and door were boarded shut. And he had taken my phone yesterday. He wouldn't be here for another day. I had to save myself. While searching for an escape route, I accidentally knocked over a box. Photographs spilled out. One look, and my body shook uncontrollably. The photos, countless of them, were all intimate pictures of me and strange men, and in every single one of them, the same person appeared. Robert Sterling. My stomach churned, and I rushed to the bathroom to vomit. I gave her more than enough sleeping pills. She wouldn't wake up even if I brought in a dozen men. Robert Sterling's words suddenly came back to me. So that wasn't an empty threat. I had only woken up because my body had developed a resistance to the drugs. Looking at the photos, I cried and laughed at the same time. The butler couldn't bring himself to lock me in the glass box and cast a pleading look at Robert Sterling. Leaning against the doorframe, smoking a cigarette, he said, "Give her a sedative." In the front row of the auction, I saw many of the men from the photos. Their eyes, as they looked at me, were filled with lust. They started bidding before the glass box was even fully lowered. 50, 000, 100, 000, 200, 000. When the price climbed to 20 million, everyone gasped. The one who shouted that figure was none other than Mark. He stared at me lecherously, his hand touching the glass. "You're coming with me today. It's about time I got a taste of you." The auctioneer began the countdown. Just as the hammer was about to fall, Robert Sterling spoke, making the ultimate bid. Instantly, everyone's attention was drawn to him. Jessica, who had been sitting beside him, gently stroking her belly, stammered slightly. "Robert, what did you just say?" I said, making the ultimate bid. Robert Sterling looked at Mark, raising an eyebrow. "Are you going to match it?" Everyone was taken aback by the sudden turn of events. Jessica screamed again. "Robert, my stomach hurts so much. The doctor is on the first floor." Robert Sterling didn't even blink. "Martha, help Jessica." He stood up, looking down at Mark. "I asked you a question. Are you going to match it?" Mark sensed the displeasure in Robert Sterling's eyes. "Since Mr. Sterling is so inclined, then I suppose I'll match it." David Davis got out of his car. As people recognized his face, the whispers grew louder. The Davis family, the largest capital in Sterling City, influential in both legitimate and illicit circles. But they never interfered in outside affairs. This was their first appearance at an event not hosted by their own family. David Davis saw me locked in the glass box, his eyes filled with distress. Robert Sterling blocked his path, a dangerous, dark light flashing in his eyes. "Are you here to?" I don't think I need to repeat myself, but if you didn't hear clearly, David Davis radiated a chilling aura. "I'm here to make the ultimate bid, to take my fiancé home." An assistant took divorce papers from his pocket. David Davis, his finger callous. Tap the blank space for the husband's name, and while I'm at it, help her get a divorce? Divorce? Anger flickered in Robert Sterling's eyes. He took a deep breath, stood up, and gestured for David Davis to leave. Sarah and I have a great relationship. We've never considered divorce, Mr. Davis. Perhaps you've mistaken someone else? David Davis ignored his rambling. He walked to the glass box, kicked it, and the lock fell to the ground. He opened the lid. Seeing me inside, clad in only scraps, he took off his coat and draped it over me. Don't be afraid. Watching the absurd scene from below, a few daring individuals whispered among themselves. I heard Mrs. Sterling was put on exhibition because she cheated. Could it be she cheated with? No way. If Mrs. Sterling cheated with the Davis family, why would she endure Robert Sterling's repeated torment? The fragmented whispers reached my ears. Robert Sterling's hand, gripping the edge of the glass box, was white from the force. His face was unreadable. Given his temper, he should have exploded by now. But constrained by David Davis's status, Robert Sterling suppressed his violent impulse. Excuse me, Sarah and I are married. Divorce isn't something an outsider can decide. Husband and wife make up after a fight, Sarah. He smiled chillingly. Why don't you explain to Mr. Davis? Explain? I pulled the coat tighter around myself, making sure I was completely covered. Then looked up at Robert Sterling, the one who asked David to draft the divorce papers. At these words, the entire hall fell silent. The false politeness on Robert Sterling's face crumbled, his features twisted, his voice changing pitch. When did you regain your hearing? Have you been listening to everything we've said all these days? Yes, I laughed self-deprecatingly. If my hearing hadn't suddenly returned, I wouldn't have seen your heart clearly. No matter how many times I told you I didn't cheat. You didn't believe me, but it doesn't matter anymore. Jessica is pregnant, ill leave, so your child can have a complete family. Don't you dare think about it. Robert Sterling started to step forward but was stopped by David Davis's men. They pinned Robert Sterling to the ground, his cheek scraping against the rough floor, leaving streaks of blood. Who are you to say you'll leave and say you'll divorce? You were the one who cheated first. You can cheat with impunity, and now that Jessica's pregnant, you've hooked up with another man? A slut who can't live without a man. David Davis scoffed, putting his foot on Robert Sterling's face. When did my fiancé become someone you can insult like that? David Davis's disgust was no longer hidden. Just as he was about to act, a man appeared at the entrance. He knocked on the doorframe nearby. Hello, I'm looking for Sarah. Robert Sterling struggled to his feet, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. What do you want with Sarah? Miss Sarah approached me for funding before. Today is the day to confirm the returns, but I couldn't get in touch with her. Robert Sterling walked over and snatched the project proposal from the man's hand, but the moment he saw the name, he completely panicked. 3 years ago, Robert Sterling's company was targeted in a scheme. I helped him through the crisis under the name of another company. My simple act of entering a coffee shop was filmed from an angle that created a visual distortion, making it seem like we were about to enter a hotel. He kept calling me, asking who the man across from me was, but the restaurant next door suffered a gas leak, and I was sent straight to the hospital. The man saw me, nodded, and then left the villa. Robert Sterling began to tremble violently. He looked at the documents in his hand, and it seemed like he finally understood everything. This was the one thing I least wanted to happen, and it happened today of all days. The man who had just looked at me with hatred now appeared remorseful. Robert Sterling's eyelashes fluttered wildly. Sadie? I hadn't heard that name in 3 years, ever since he misunderstood me for cheating. He either called me by my full name or used every insult imaginable. Robert Sterling tried to step forward but was stopped by David Davis's men. He was losing control. Why didn't you say something sooner? Why did you let me misunderstand for so many years? Do so many things to hurt you? A cold smile played on my lips. Was it because I didn't want to say anything? Several times I opened my mouth, only to be met with Robert Sterling's mocking gaze. Sarah, that's a good story you've cooked up. Do you think I'd believe it? Even when I wanted to leave, he stopped me and locked me in the attic. Over time, this truth that had been told countless times was buried. Every time I brought it up, it only covered me in dust. Sadie, Robert Sterling's eyes were pleading. We won't get divorced, okay? I've made so many mistakes over the years. Give me a chance, let me atone. Shaking my head, I reached for David Davis's hand. Don't call me that anymore. I don't deserve it. Once the divorce papers are signed, we'll be strangers. You can leave the signed agreement at Davis Corporation. It'll be going now. David Davis held me tightly. Robert Sterling still wanted to chase after me. But just then, Jessica let out a scream, "My baby." She shrieked dramatically, her peripheral vision fixed on Robert Sterling's movements in the past. Whenever she said she wasn't feeling well, Robert Sterling would become incredibly anxious. Several times, for just a minor scratch, he would take Jessica to the hospital for a full checkup. Now, her voice was already hoarse. But Robert Sterling didn't spare her a single glance. "Robert, if your stomach hurts, go find a doctor. Don't call my name." Robert Sterling glared at Jessica, then lifted his foot to chase after me. At that moment, Jessica grabbed his leg tightly. "Robert, you can't leave." Watching my figure gradually move further away, it felt as if a rope was slowly tightening around Robert Sterling's heart. His flesh seemed to tear, and a feeling of suffocation and pain enveloped his entire body. "Sarah." Robert Sterling's eyes turned bloodshot. "If you dare get in that car, I'll kill myself. You're my wife. No one can take you away." My hand didn't hesitate as I opened the car door. When I got in the car, the scene outside had already descended into chaos. The car window closed, shutting out the noise. Everything about the Sterling family was no longer my concern. Back at the Davis house, my room was exactly as it had been 5 years ago. David Davis leaned against the doorframe, his eyes like deep water. "After you left, everything was sealed up just as it was. Thankfully, they waited for their owner to come home." That night, David Davis posted an update on his social media, which he hadn't used in a long time. It was a picture of me from behind in the study. The next day, I was woken up by a commotion. When I went out, I saw Robert Sterling kneeling at the entrance. He and several bodyguards around him were injured, clearly having just been in a fight. Seeing me appear, a look of grievance crossed his face. "Sadie, I've come to take you home. We still have a home together." Looking at the face I had once deeply loved, I let out a soft laugh. Wasn't that just the venue for auctioning me off? Robert Sterling's face paled. He knelt, trying to move closer, but seeing the distance in my eyes, he stiffened. "Sadie, it was all a misunderstanding. For 3 years, Robert Sterling believed I owed him, and he treated me with utter arrogance. Now, seeing him like this, like a dog begging for scraps, a subtle sense of satisfaction spread through me. "Sadie, are you not going to be with me? Are you going to marry this man, Davis?" Robert Sterling gritted his teeth. "Do you know how many cruel things he's done behind the scenes? He's not as honorable as he seems." Slap. A crisp sound echoed. I had put all my strength into it. Robert Sterling's right cheek immediately showed the imprint of my hand. He looked at my hand, gently took it, and kissed the side of my lips. "You touched me, Sadie. Does that mean you're not angry anymore?" I shook his hand away. David Davis appeared behind me. He used an alcohol wipe to carefully disinfect my hand. "We're adults." I frowned. "Robert Sterling, let's part ways with some dignity." The person kneeling before me trembled violently. "I never wanted dignity," he spoke in a muffled voice. "All I want is for you to come back to me." A few teardrops fell to the ground, forming small pools on the tile floor. Robert Sterling's voice suddenly turned cold. "Sadie, I know what you're worried about. I can dig out my heart and show you. My heart only holds you." Due to the fight, Robert Sterling's shirt collar was wide open. He clawed at his heart. His fingernails left streaks of blood on his pale skin, as if he were trying to dig his heart out with his bare hands to show me. "Get him out of here." David Davis pulled me, and without looking back, we entered the villa. At the dinner table, he seemed hesitant to speak. But after our 8th glance, he finally sighed. "Will you soften?" "No," I answered quickly. Perhaps from the moment he locked me in that glass box, my marriage to him was already over. In the afternoon, my lawyer informed me that Robert Sterling had come around and wanted to discuss the parts of the divorce agreement he didn't agree with at the law firm. As I was leaving, David Davis held my hand, his face full of worry. "Maybe I should go with you?" The butler spoke hesitantly at that moment. "Mr. Davis, you have a meeting with GU Corporation this afternoon. Don't worry." I touched his cheek. "It's just going to the law firm." About 500 yards from the law firm, the driver suddenly stopped. "Miss Sarah, it looks like there's road construction." Seeing that it was almost the agreed upon time, I said, "Then I'll walk the rest of the way myself." The road was rough, and my heart felt a little uneasy. Suddenly, I heard the crunch of leaves behind me. I turned around in fright. The next second, a heavy blow to the back of my head sent me blacking out. When I woke up again, the smell of dust made me cough. My hands, waist, and legs were cuffed to a chair. Strangely, the inside of the handcuffs seemed to be lined with velvet, and my wrists didn't hurt as much as expected. Even the chair was a comfortable armchair. Where was I? Sadie. Robert Sterling's voice echoed in the space. He suddenly walked in and touched my skin, sending shivers down my spine. Why did you run away? Robert Sterling looked at me with a broken expression. You forced me to bring you back this way. But it's okay, sweetie, we're home now. No one can separate us here. You're truly insane. Staring at the nearly delirious Robert Sterling before me, I could only squeeze out those words through clenched teeth. If the price of winning you back is going insane, he brushed his cheek against my fingertips, then I'll gladly pay it. Sadie, do you know? I always thought you didn't love me anymore. That's why I went to Jessica. At the mention of that name, Robert Sterling's eyes suddenly widened. I have something to show you. He returned in less than 5 minutes. In his hand, he held a glass jar. Seeing what was floating inside, I looked at him in shock. Robert Sterling seemed pleased with my reaction. You saw it, Sadie. I knew you'd feel a connection with my child. Yesterday, I had someone check my email to see who sent me that photo that was used against you. He paused. It was Jessica. Such a vicious and evil woman doesn't deserve to carry my child. So I took the child out. Sadie, only you are worthy of carrying my child. Hearing this, my heart pounded. The madness in Robert Sterling's eyes overflowed, emotion overriding his sanity. He looked at me, his lips nearing to brush against my cheek. At this close distance, I saw the spreading red veins in the whites of his eyes and the dark circles beneath them. Look at me, Sadie, he whispered. I only sought out Jessica because she resembled you in some ways, but your eyes are too unique. Every time I missed you intensely, I would make Jessica wear a blindfold. Only when you were near could I get excited. Her dead fish eyes were too disappointing. As if desperately trying to prove his words were true, I felt a strange sensation on my lower leg. Robert Sterling pushed slightly with his waist, the pleasure from the friction causing him to narrow his eyes. Sadie, he stepped back, and I realized Robert Sterling was kneeling completely. My lower leg felt the process from dry to wet. Robert Sterling looked up at me, revealing the exquisite collar around his neck. Sadie's property. Freeing one of my hands, he guided mine to touch the leather restraint. I had this custom made by Italian craftsmen. I've wanted to do this for a long time. It's not just this one on my neck. There's another collar with my name on it. We'll possess each other. Well, Robert Sterling groaned, and fluid dripped down. He gasped for air, the corners of his eyes flushed red. We're intertwined again, for the next week. Robert Sterling kept me locked in the basement. He stayed with me constantly, even locking my wrist to his with a chain at night when we slept. Sadie, do you love me? Every day, he would ask me this question. Robert Sterling never got an answer, yet he stubbornly kept asking, until today. When he looked at me, his eyes filled with obsession. Sadie, do you hate me? 7 days had passed. Robert Sterling only gave me plain water. He wouldn't let me eat. I was kept alive by 4 drips of glucose. Yes, I hate you. My voice was weak. Robert Sterling chuckled softly. Hate is good, Sadie. Hate lasts longer than love. Soon I understood why he had asked me that. The sound of police sirens outside stimulated my nerves. Robert Sterling stood directly in front of me. He knelt down again, placing my feet on his vulnerable spot. The tear mole on his face was a symbol of his wildness. Do you think David Davis will think you're dirty when he sees you like this? Just like how I tormented myself these past 3 years, will he follow in my footsteps? When the police broke down the door, my clothes had been torn to shreds by Robert Sterling. Seeing Robert Sterling on top of me, David Davis punched him in the face. Smelling the familiar scent of pine, the tears I had held back suddenly fell in streams. It's okay. It's all over. David Davis stroked my hair repeatedly, then kissed my forehead. His lips trembled, repeating it's okay over and over, as if speaking to me and himself at the same time. As I walked out the door, I finally understood why it took them a week to find me. This was a villa Robert Sterling had built himself in the mountains. Construction had been extremely secretive at the time. Apart from the construction team, it would have been difficult to find even with a map. Before Robert Sterling was put into the police car, he shouted in my direction, Sarah, I really love you, back at the Davis house. The first thing I did was throw all the clothes I was wearing outside the door. Robert Sterling hadn't allowed me to shower. H acted like an animal, saying he wanted to leave his scent on me. Everything that happened at the mountain villa made me tremble with disgust. Sadie, I've found you a therapist. After handing me the information, David Davis sat within my safety zone. I know this time has been difficult. I'll take you to the therapist when you feel ready. It turned out that when I was in danger, a true lover would plan everything meticulously, not become the one inflicting the trauma. David Davis was acutely aware of my unease around men. He accompanied me every time there was a court hearing. Countless times I thought back to those dark, lightless days, and David Davis would place his hand on my shoulder. Don't be afraid. I'll never let you fall into that situation again. Those days you were missing. It felt like half of me was taken away. After the trial ended, he withdrew his hand, making no other excessive gestures. Robert Sterling's sentence came down quickly, for kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment. He was sentenced to 15 years without parole. His company had been facing bankruptcy due to poor management during this time. Regarding the exhibitions he held at home, the court ordered him to compensate me with all the illicit gains, plus $300,000 for emotional damages. And no matter how they asked, Robert Sterling refused to reveal Jessica's whereabouts. The closest he came to the truth was a cold laugh. Go find her somewhere she can't be found, maybe overseas. Seeing the news that Robert Sterling had been imprisoned, I breathed a heavy sigh of relief. This nightmare, like hell, had finally ended. David Davis apologized to me countless times during this period. He always felt it was his fault for not doing more. One night, unable to sleep, I got up to get water and saw David Davis sitting alone by the floor-to-ceiling window. The tip of his cigarette glowed. Seeing me, David Davis instinctively stubbed out the cigarette with his fingers. Sadie, every time I close my eyes, I feel like you're going to disappear. I know you're meant to be free, but I still can't help but feel insecure. I can provide you with any material comfort you desire, but I can't force you to stay by my side. Looking at the scattered sleeping pills on the floor, I wrapped my arms around his waist. This was the first time I had initiated physical contact with David Davis since the kidnapping. His body stiffened, and he looked at me anxiously. It'll get better, slowly. Listening to his heartbeat, I nuzzled his tense muscles. You too. After this conversation, David Davis returned to his old self. I accepted the therapist's plan and found a job. Every day after work, David Davis would be waiting for me at the entrance. Sometimes there were flowers in the passenger seat, sometimes a small cake. That shadow was slowly being covered by the scent of flowers and the sweetness of cake. 6 months later, I had gradually emerged from the psychological trauma. At a rooftop restaurant, David Davis presented me with a ring. I thought, it's time to start a new life.